Are you looking for an adventure-filled experience rooted in your Catholic faith this summer? Annunciation Heights might be exactly what your family is looking for. Nestled in the stunning beauty of Estes Park, Colorado, right at the base of Long's Peak, this Catholic camp exists for one reason: to create opportunities for a transformative encounter with Jesus Christ. My daughter and I went 2 summers ago, and it was incredible. The faith, the adventure, the friendships. It was one of those experiences that really stay with you. We loved it so much that this year our whole family is going back. Annunciation Heights offers week-long youth camps for kids in grades 3 through 12, as well as 4-day family camps where everyone can experience the beauty of the mountains together. If you're looking for a place where faith and adventure come together, this is it. They handle the adventure so that you can witness the transformation. For more information, visit annunciationheights.org.
I do want women to know that there is an alternative to suppressing their bodies with hormones, that they can see their body as a good and they can live in that body holistically.
Totally. Oh my gosh.
It's amazing.
I don't think I could live my whole life knowing this and not sharing it with anyone. Hey everyone, and thanks for listening to the Hormone Genius Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Teresa Kenny, and today we are going to talk about the popular topic of protein. I don't know about you, Teresa. I'm pretty sure I know your answer, but I feel like the protein convo has been circulating for quite some time recently, and for good reason, and we're going to talk about why. And, for me, when I would think about protein, in the earlier years or even just last year and before, I'm forming my ideas and understandings of how important protein is. I would think protein equals muscle. Like the more protein I eat, the more muscle I can build. And that was kind of where it ended in a sense. But really, proteins are the building blocks of life. And we need proteins for our processes to function and to live. And so if we're not eating protein, then we're not going to be healthy and well. Especially as healthy and well as we could be. So are you ready to jump in, Teresa, to this very important topic?
Yeah, I think that we do talk about this protein thing a lot, Jamie, but I feel like this is going to be a little bit of tying some things together. And even for myself, and I if you're in medical land or even a hormone coach or study this kind of stuff and just listen, don't you feel like we hear a lot of words that are really big and scary? And like people use these words like protein and collagen and amino acids, but it's really complex. Like I actually started listening to a lecture from, it was a guy who does a ton of for medical students, like lectures. And I was just like, I'm going to listen to amino acids and protein synthesis. And I was like, this is probably not what I'm going to talk about on a podcast, because it was like diagrams of carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, and then where does that go? And then connecting all of the, little strings of amino acids together. I mean, it's really complex at the cellular level. So we're going to take it a little bit higher than that. And we are going to keep it at a little higher level. But again, every time we do a podcast, I learn and I just continue to be inspired by the fact that we get to participate in a podcast that shares information with others, but also continues to help inform ourselves about what's so important. And I think what all of us know about protein is that, number one, like you said, Jamie, these are the building blocks of all of our cells. And our body is made up. And we said this about collagen in our last episode about collagen. Our body is made up of 40% of collagen tissue. Actually, it was probably even more than that. But we're made up of protein. Our body is protein. And in fact, as we even age and as we sleep, our bodies have to basically use amino acids that come from our muscles as we sleep in order to survive. Protein is so essential for what we call anabolic health, which is that our bodies are in a state of either growth, not growth, or balance. And all of us should at least want to stay in balance. Nobody wants to go into what we call catabolism, which is basically the breakdown of muscle, because our bodies will do that if it needs to in order to survive. So we talk a lot about that kind of process of survival. And so even with trauma, Jamie, you can go into a state of breaking down muscle so that your body has these essential amino acids to basically survive. So I just find that all really fascinating, and just that how intuitive our bodies are. to basically use all of these nutrients and minerals and chemicals and processes to basically make sure that we stay in balance.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, when we begin to understand more of the why behind some of these health things, like protein, for instance, we're going to be more motivated to eat more of it. Even today, in the last 24 hours, Teresa, preparing for this episode, I have eaten a lot of protein, actually, because I'm thinking about it. And it's because I'm learning more than I did, from 48 hours ago. I'm learning more. I'm learning more about actually, I know it's important. People say it's important, but I'm understanding why and a little bit of the how. And that to me clicks, and I think it's going to click for our listeners as well. So let's first talk about amino acids. So when we were preparing for this, I was telling Teresa, I was like, Teresa, I want to talk about amino acids. I mean, we hear about amino acids and we hear about like essential amino acids, short chain. Well, that's short chain fatty. Is there short chain amino acids too? There's short chain fatty acids.
I mean, I'm sure there is.
Oh,
I mean, I'm sure each one of them have a different probably set of length, basically.
Yeah.
You're right. They might get divided up, but I'm not sure about that, Jamie.
Yeah. So I think when we understand some of it, and again, it's not going to be crazy because it is a lot and kind of complicated. But let's talk about what amino acids are, Teresa.
Yeah. I mean, they're basically products that contain hydrogen, nitrogen, carbon, is the other one oxygen. They're like basically a kind of let me say, like put it in order, kind of like a collection of very important enzymes that basically build cellular tissue or build things. So they're building blocks basically. And not all amino acids are the same. Like you said, there's essential amino acids that basically our bodies cannot produce, so they have to be ingested. And then there's non-essential amino acids that our bodies can produce, but these basically also like need essential amino acids also to work. So I think the kind of big message is that it's incredibly important for us to get into our body essential amino acids because they are the building blocks of all cells. And they basically help with the immune system. They help with building muscles. They help with our organs basically being able to work. They're kind of like the currency constantly of renewal. So that our bodies need basically this kind of currency in a sense that if we don't have it, we can't be signaling the right things to our body in order to stay in balance in every way possible. So they are definitely the raw materials that make our bodies work.
Yeah. It's interesting because one of the amino acids that probably our listeners have heard of before is tryptophan. And right now, as we're recording this, it's February, so we don't know when you're going to be listening to it, probably somewhere around that, 2026. But you think about Christmas meal, you think about Thanksgiving, and you think about how when you eat a lot of turkey, you feel very tired. And that's an effect of one amino acid, tryptophan. And like Teresa said, our a lot of meat products, meat from cows and turkey and chicken and eggs and all these, they have all of the 9 essential amino acids, which are so important. And then even cottage cheese is an incredible protein source. Sometimes I think the idea of eating protein seems overwhelming, Teresa, because one, we don't really understand how it all works together. And two, we ask ourselves, how on God's green earth can I eat that much protein, And even cottage cheese, Teresa, and it's great at night too to eat cottage cheese at night, but cottage cheese has like 15 grams of protein for a half of a cup.
Yeah, that's insane. And that's way better than eggs. I mean, eggs, you have to eat like 5-6 eggs to get that same amount, So yeah, I think that's an underestimated food, Jamie, for a protein source. Totally.
Cottage cheese. And, we think about meats and eggs, and we think about, the dairies, and we think about the 9 essential amino acids. But then we think about some food that we know has protein, but it doesn't have the full complete picture. We think about collagen, and that's actually why I was bringing up the tryptophan. Collagen is great for us, but it's one essential amino acid short, and it's short of tryptophan, but not to say we shouldn't take in collagen. We totally should. But it's good to pair some foods together like beans, nuts, seeds. They don't have the full profile, And that's why I think too, you see a lot of cultures eating, meat and beans, or, the cottage cheese and the beans, or the cottage cheese and the seeds. Pumpkin seeds and cottage cheese is one of my favorite treats. Well, I don't know if I'd call it a treat. Maybe like a side dish. Put some seasoning in it and maybe it becomes a treat. I don't know. So it's interesting to me that not all protein equals the same in terms of the profile of the makeup. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, actually, Jamie, this is a quote. I don't even know where it comes from, but it's, the idea that animal proteins are like pre-assembled furniture and plant proteins are like IKEA. You have to put it together.
Oh.
That sometimes like this is why like animal protein is like more complete, basically, of getting all of the amino acids. So it's, because I think people wonder, can you be a vegetarian or a vegan and get all of the things that you need as far as protein is concerned? And without supplementation, probably not, because animal proteins basically just contain a more complete, put together protein package. And in order to get all of it, you're not going to be able to get that from just plant foods. And I heard Don Layman, who is considered like one of the biggest experts on protein and protein synthesis, say like, plant proteins, they have essential amino acids, but they don't, the plant really wasn't expected to be eaten. So they're not made in order for you to have their amino acids. They only have amino acids because that's what the plant needs to survive. So it's kind of like, I guess, that evolutionary idea that in a sense, we were meant to be carnivores, like we were meant to eat meat and eat those types of animal-based foods, and that plants kind of are just a bonus.
Yeah. Well, that's a really
important bonus, but yeah, a bonus.
Yeah. And a protein from meat is also more bioavailable. So that goes to your point, Teresa, that we absorb the protein from meat much better. And it's just much more efficient than when we're getting in the protein from plants. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, I don't know if our listeners struggle with this, and maybe I said this in a previous episode, but Teresa, when I am truly trying to amp up my protein, a normal way to do this would be to add whey protein to your smoothies, whatever. But I get so backed up. Do you get backed up with whey protein? Forget about it. I'm never doing whey protein again. I learned my lesson. I amped up the hydration, everything. It was the worst for me. So that's one reason I've actually moved to pea protein, PEA, pea protein. And so, I can increase my protein. It's not going to be as bioavailable to me as the whey protein. But again, even using protein powders in your smoothies in the morning, make protein the most important part of your day. We know fibers are important. We know complex carbs, we know fats. Those are all very important, and we'll do episodes on those too. But even just starting with protein in the morning with an egg, with your cottage cheese, what have you, with your protein shake, it's going to set you up so much better for the rest of the day. And it also blunts any sort of blood sugar spike where if you were to eat even a donut after your protein, your blood sugar won't rise as high as if you didn't eat the protein prior. So I love that.
Yeah, it's also something I tell my patients all the time. Protein has to be the foundation underneath your carbohydrate loads that allows for insulin production to be not these big peaks. So that protein basically creates this ability for the body to signal first that, yes, we need insulin, but we don't need you to go straight up the mountain so fast, because a simple carbohydrate basically is going to make that insulin spike right away. So this is why it's important. I think we have used this term to cloak your meal in their carbs. Right. Yeah. Because that signal right away. And again, in every way, kind of these amino acids are signaling something to the body to either repair or either go to the brain and utilize. So like I said, it's you want that signaling right away to be protein that your body is given, instead of just this kind of, again, sugar that basically is oh, I need instant energy that I need to use so fast and so right away.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And even as we are working on building muscle, as women in particular, but men as well, it is, of course, if we know that muscle and protein, they have a 1-on-1 relationship. I don't know about that ratio, but they have a handheld relationship where, if we are lifting weights, making sure that we do get enough protein. And something that I love too, when I think about muscle mass, is I think about how it takes, correct me if I'm wrong, Teresa, it takes more energy to maintain muscle. So having more muscle increases our metabolism simply because it requires more. Is that true?
Well, yeah, absolutely. But it requires, what we're saying is it requires more amino acids. Mm-hmm. It requires more building blocks, right? Like, because what you're signaling is like, I have more tissue, and the more tissue you have in your body, the more amino acids you need for that cellular function to be maintained. And again, one thing about this is interesting, just like nitrogen is one of the kind of like elements that is in more of the essential amino acids that come from protein from animal-based foods. And nitrogen, we know, is like super signaling for life, right? Like we think of it from gardening standpoint, like nitrogen makes things grow.
Right.
So these essential amino acids, and again, if you only ate plants, you wouldn't get that type of signaling. So leucine often is considered one of the most muscle signaling essential amino acids. And that one sometimes people are deficient in, especially women, because women tend to underprotein. We eat less because we're trying to maintain maybe sometimes a lower caloric balance because of weight, right? Mm-hmm. So there's certainly a balance, but I think what women need to probably do is more focus on, because you don't have to go crazy on calories in order to get good quality protein. And I think that's the little bit of a area where we can try to dial in a sense, and especially as women get to perimenopause, is that you want to still get protein, because I think women, worry they're gaining weight, right? So what do you do when you start to gain weight? What you're going to eat less.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do when you eat less? You're going to get less essential amino acids, less amino acids in general, and then your body is going to go into a state of catabolism. And when that happens, of course, what can you think? Oh, well, my body is under stress, and I already have cortisol as an imbalance when I'm in perimenopause, and I'm adding to the stress. So it's really important to maintain this signaling that says, no, I don't want to break down muscle and use my body as a source of survival. I am going to feed my body what it needs in order to continue to be in balance. So, and it doesn't mean, and I think we can talk about this, Jamie, it doesn't mean necessarily we need to eat even 1 gram of protein per body pound, which I think this, kind of phrase goes around a lot, and we can dig into like, is that really true? If I'm 145 to 50 pounds, do I need 150 grams of protein a day?
Right. Right.
What do you think?
I mean, I just say stick to 100. I mean, I think it depends on how much you're exercising, how much you're lifting. What are your current habits? That's what I would tell somebody. And actually, there was a coaching client who was obsessed with protein and everything, just really type A. And I can relate to the type A person. I would say that I'm a type A person. So if something's good for me, or if something's good that a type A catches wind by, well, watch out, because they're gonna do that thing times 1,000, because they're gonna think, oh, more of it's always better, And I have a strong will, so I'm gonna do that more, and it's gonna take me less time to get there, and yada yada. And just by the way, newsflash, that doesn't always work, and most times it doesn't. So this gal comes to the appointment, and she's eating 200 grams of protein a day. Okay. She is getting facial hair. It's like she adopted PCOS through all of the protein she was eating. So then a couple thoughts came to mind. Well, if we're eating too much energy, so calories are energy. If we're eating too much than we need, we'll gain weight. And she was. Secondly, hirsutism, gaining weight, low mood, not feeling great at all. Well, she was overdoing it. But then you think about the quality of the meat. If she's eating that much meat, assuming it's mostly protein from meat, and if it's being treated with hormones and this and that, that's a lot of money if you're buying all fresh, like grass-fed, yada, yada sort of meat. So people can overdo it. And she was very constipated.
Yeah.
She wasn't getting enough water, fiber, there was not a balance.
Yeah, well, and exactly. So you could always overdo, anything. And I think even from that nitrogen standpoint, like there at some point something can be a little hard for our kidneys to completely filter out. Like if you're getting so much meat, you're actually getting a super high nitrogen load. We see that in blood work, in the blood urea nitrogen. So I will sometimes see panels and see when people actually are under protein nutriented, and when they're over a little bit. And not that it's always like a sign of something totally wrong, but like if you eat a lot of protein, or if you're ketogenic, but you're heavy protein ketogenic, you can have high BUN in your blood. And if you are undernourished, you might have a low albumin, which shows you're not getting enough protein as well. So, these are things that are important. We have to maintain balance and just be reasonable and logical, and not just take dogma as, like we listen on the internet and we just like do things, right? So we're just trying to, keep it as simple as possible. But Jamie, you mentioned even low mood, so like why, this just shows, like our brain also runs on, all of these important essential amino acids. Like you said, tryptophan. Well, tryptophan is a precursor to making serotonin. And there's another amino acid called tyrosine, and that tyrosine is responsible for making dopamine and norepinephrine. And then there's glutamate, which we know glutamate also has a function in the gut. In fact, glutamate is like kind of like an essential amino acid that protects the gut lining, but it also is a part of maintaining kind of like the balance between our neurotransmitters from an excitatory to a non-excitatory level. So your mood, your ability to focus, and your motivation really is also impacted. If you are under-proteined, you're going to feel tired. And that makes sense. I mean, think of someone who's malnourished, right? Like, I often think of people in like third world countries, and like we're literally giving them rice patties, and they're not getting protein. And I'm sure they feel so lethargic and so tired, and they're not getting these essential amino acids. So we are so blessed, right? And that's always something I think to remember, always, like in our lives, like we're living in the United States, and yes, is there food scarcity, but not what we see always at like these third world country levels. So anyway, but let's get back to the question, Jamie, of again, how much protein do we think like people should eat? And there is Dr. Don Layman out there who is kind of considered the king of like protein understanding and protein synthesis, and done a ton of research in this area. And I think Dr. Gabrielle Lyons is a great resource in this area as well. But even when listening to him, he doesn't say, you have to have 1 gram of protein per body pound. I think the threshold probably for people who want to kind of be still gaining muscle, not losing muscle, and are working out kind of on a regular basis, nothing crazy, right? Jamie, we're not talking like marathon runners and triathletes and things like that, is probably more around that 0.75 grams per body pound. So I think you're right when you say, about 100 grams of protein. And I generally, with my patients who, just are kind of that average body weight, will try to have them shoot for 90 plus grams. And why is that easy? Because we can go to that whole 30 grams of protein 3 times a day. And, that can be just an easy kind of mantra. And I've probably said this on a podcast before, but one thing I do with my patients, Jamie, is I sit down with them and I'm like, hey, let's talk about your protein and how much you're getting. And I'll say, let's think about trying to get that 20 to 30 grams of protein with each meal. And I say, you can go into Google and put 30 grams of protein and then hit Google Images. And what happens when you do that, so all of you listening, you can sit with your phone or your computer, and if you hit Google Images, when you just put in the browser 30 grams of protein, you will get all of these pictures of what foods make up 30 grams of protein. Like it'd be, I don't know, I think it's like at least 6 eggs. It might be more than that, or a cup of cottage cheese, or with, or 2 Greek yogurts, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But that gives you at least a sense of what and how much.
Right.
And so that is a really great starting point.
Totally. One thing, Teresa, I just started doing, I was over at a friend's house It was actually shortly after we released the 3 C's. So, of course, I'm doing colostrum and I'm doing definitely creatine and I'm amping that up. I was taking way too little. Gosh, it feels like the algorithms are like jumping on my back, but I love every moment of it because I'm learning so much more about creatine. One thing I need to say, even though this isn't about protein, I just have to say this. I was listening to this gal. She was interviewed by, I can't remember, but she was talking about how creatine, if you don't sleep well, that next day, make sure that you're getting, and this is not my advice, this is just what she's saying, at least 15 to 20 grams of creatine. They did a study where I don't know exactly the details of the study, and if I find the video, I'll link the video, but she talks about how they did some sort of study to see like maybe somebody's alertness or whatever from getting poor sleep. And then they did another one with poor sleep and creatine, like 15 grams or 20 grams. And then they did the third person, so they're comparing all 3, of sleeping really well. The second one that got 15 to 20 grams of creatine, having slept poorly, did a better job than the person who slept well. Crazy. Wow. So I think about that sometimes if I don't sleep well. I think, okay, I really am going to amp up that creatine. So I was at a friend's house and Vital Proteins, we've all heard of Vital Proteins, and they have a collagen, but there's collagen and protein in that powder, so there are some, I mean, that's what it sounded like, 18 grams. And so in my coffee in the morning, it can be very simple. I do my Wonder Cow packet, which is vanilla flavored. I put that in my coffee. And then I do my Vital Proteins collagen. And then in a separate cup, I'm like the 3 C's master. Teresa, if you guys haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to the 3 C's because it's like overtaken my life.
I think it's so great. I mean, like that 3 C's, like supplements, I do think like gut health, immune health, amino acids, like it's not everything. And I mean, this is like we always want to say medicine should be thy food and food should be thy medicine. That was from Hippocrates. But like we want to add that in. You can't out supplement a healthy lifestyle. But still, like I do feel really good about that little combination.
Because it's easy. I think that's my point in like, it seems like these things are complicated and it's going to take months to see full results, I'm sure. I still sometimes struggle with my immune system, but I think what I'm so pumped about, Teresa, is that it doesn't seem hard at all. Like it doesn't seem like it's a big challenge. Like I have to, weigh something like there's nothing hard about it. It's basically very simple and very easy. And so I'm praying that it will really move the needle for me.
Yeah. That's great, Jamie. What else do you want to talk about with protein? I mean, like, I think for those of you who are actually trying hard to get all of these things in order, we know that then really in order to, especially you in perimenopause, right? Like you want to make sure actually you build muscle because the more muscle mass you have, the more like calories you can burn. And we know that muscle mass is thermogenic, that you actually burn more calories with it. And so this is protective. And we often will say that muscle is a longevity organ, and it truly is. Like they have done studies that show that literally grip strength will identify your longevity. So just your ability to hang on to a bar and hang there for a certain amount of time, which that is totally challenging. And something that I was doing for a while was working on my pull-up ability, Jamie, like my ability to do one pull-up. I just got out of the habit of it. And so now I'm just like talking out loud and realizing like I need to go back to practicing that. Because in a sense, that is like obviously grip strength. That's not everything. It's back and traps and shoulders and everything. But still, like that's your ability to hold on and grip. So you need to be actually giving these essential amino acids and protein signaling the on switch for the ability to make more muscle or that anabolic growth, basically. So 2 to 3 times a week, we should be lifting weights. And we have, of course, a great podcast episode on weightlifting. So if you haven't listened to that one, please go back and listen to it. But that is just really so important for perimenopause. And again, if you are in perimenopause and you are like gaining weight, because you just started lifting weights and started creatine, just know that that is not uncommon for there to be in the first few, like whatever months, even weeks, that you're going to see weight go up and to not panic about that. Again, we have to know that the body has to understand that when we go through menopause, we are not dying. We want to be around until we are 80 years old and plus. So in order to, kind of like, again, signal that, you have to feed adequately, and you have to, continue to signal to the body that you need good energy, and, that really just takes that balance. So if you see your weight go up, don't worry, it will rebalance out, but a lot of it is that the creatine can cause a little bit of water retention in the beginning, but because muscle weighs more than fat, you're going to be in a process of exchanging muscle for fat, and that does not happen overnight, meaning that it will take some time, in a sense, to kind of break down your fat cells after building that muscle, and to kind of go backwards, or, kind of flip the balance between muscle and fat cells.
Something else I want to say too, Teresa. So recently, as you know, and maybe our listeners, I can't remember, I've experienced back pain, nerve pain, yada, yada. And so it's been very frustrating for me to do any lifting, because it's like I can't. And this has been months, okay? So I'm talking to ladies out there who's like, thanks, that sounds great to lift weights. What a novelty. But I can't, maybe that's you. So I'll tell you some things I've been doing just to keep things. I don't want to lose a bunch of work that I kind of worked myself up to in terms of muscle strength. And also, for those of you who've maybe never tried, this is how you start. So for me personally, I have an area on my body, is my right shoulder back area, and I can't necessarily run because of the movement of my arms. I can't lift, definitely, anything like that, but I can move my legs. So even though I want to sculpt my arms and strengthen my upper body, even if you can't do a full body weight anything, that's fine. Do calf raises. Find some way that you can activate and fire your muscles somehow, because that's what you're doing when you're lifting. You're firing and you're activating those muscles. You're causing, again, these little micro traumas where you build stronger muscles because of this work. And it compounds. But even if you can't lift heavy, because I want to lift heavy, and the type A personality in me is getting so mad. But I can activate my glutes just even sitting in this chair, and I can do that 20 times. I can stand and I can do calf raises. I 2 summers ago, Teresa, I made a goal to do 50 push-ups. Okay, that was my goal. I was going to work all summer to get to 50, all in one time. Okay,
right. So I started goal. I did that, but I was like shooting for 30.
Oh yeah,
so 50 is good, man.
I did it. Well, I started with 10, and then once 10 became easy, then I got to 20, and then it's like I just kind of kept building. Once I got to 20, that seemed easy. Then I got to 30, and then by that time, it's like a marathon at mile 20. You just like kind of really try to do it all, and so I did that. I got to 50. Okay, there is no chance in this God's green earth right here in this moment that I could do one push up, So there's something that happens to a woman when she feels like she could do something and now she can't, especially if she values being healthy and values this. It can feel a little like you're imprisoned, but there are always hacks, is basically my point, Teresa, on ways to fire a muscle. It doesn't mean that, again, if you can't lift heavy, then don't. It's okay. Activate the muscle, like contract, release, contract, release, contract, release. Like activate your muscles so they're just not sedentary. That's your first goal, and it will make you feel like you're doing something. It's also really good after you eat doing that. Like, great, calf raises, do 10 of them. It'll help your blood sugar. So don't feel like all hope is lost, basically. That's my whole long soapbox.
Jamie, I'm sitting here and I'm squeezing my cheeks.
I am too.
Now that you're saying that, I'm like, oh my gosh, like you just sit here like during a podcast
like 10 times.
Your cheeks, yeah.
Yeah, just get it.
I'm like doing something.
It is. Maybe I should make a goal to do 50 cheek squeezes.
Yeah. But
instead,
that's such a great point. We often in our lifetime will have an injury, have a bum hip, have a bum knee, have a bum ankle, and you can kind of feel like, oh, I just am never going to exercise. Like, I have to rest everything, but you don't. Work around it. Use the body parts that you have that are in good order to kind of, make sure you're still, again, signaling like to the body, like, I don't want to just sit here and die. Like, I want to continue to live. So, that's a really good point. Jamie, I think you wanted to bring this up, so I'm going to bring it up right now. Well, number one, I think I said earlier that glutamate was the precursor to like neurotransmitters and their excitability. And that I might have gotten that mixed up with glutamine. And so glutamine is more of the gut amino acid that helps like our gut lining and prevents leaky gut and all this stuff. Glutamate is truly the amino acid that helps with the neuroexcitability. So I probably said those wrong. But you wanted to talk about glycine a little bit. Just that last, like, we released a little short about like zinc glycinate and magnesium glycinate. But did you guys know there's a reason why like sometimes they pair an amino acid or another element with a vitamin like magnesium or zinc, or we see that with iron sometimes. You're like, well, why is it iron glycinate or iron, biglycinate, something like that? Because it helps to attach those elements to something else to help with absorption. And those things that we attach it to may have some other benefit. And we talked about that, Jamie, that glycine, of course, is an amino acid that's incredibly calming, and it helps, your nervous systems tells your nervous system it is safe now to relax, which is why Jamie and I take magnesium glycinate at bedtime. And you can get glycine in foods like collagen, bone broth, meat, fish, and even gelatin.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because there's all these different forms, like malate, glycinate, citrate, there's all those, and it does seem confusing, but is the way we can think about that, I know that could be a whole other kind of conversation, but is the way you think about it is you're not necessarily thinking about the zinc or the magnesium, for instance, although you're thinking more of like the glycinate as being the calming, the citrate as being the something else, the malate being something else, and that kind of identifying the function almost, or the
kind of like what the bonus effect of it is. Yeah, I mean how that thing will actually maybe take root, take hold in the body, and what effects it will have. So like you said, magnesium citrate, the difference between magnesium citrate and magnesium glycinate is the citrate, which I think is a salt, I'm not positive, but it actually has more ability than to attach to the gut lining. And because citrate attacks in the gut lining, then what does mag citrate do? It causes a super more laxative effect. So when people really need to poop, we give them mag citrate. Mm-hmm. We don't give them mag glycinate if they are like 5 days backed up, because mag glycinate isn't going to activate in the bowels. It will give magnesium to the body in other ways, but it's not like acting in that spot.
Got it. So it's like the suitcase the magnesium is carried in.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. You have always so good analogies, Jamie.
Well, it's
yeah.
Saying that.
Here's another amino acid, Jamie, that we could attach to another supplement that's very common, and that's cysteine. Cysteine is an antioxidant that we often will call like the antioxidant, the big powerful antioxidant in the body, because it helps to build the master antioxidant, which is glutathione. And what do we kind of commonly recommend? And we didn't do a whole podcast on it, but was in our other podcast we did with 3 supplements, was N-acetylcysteine. And again, this is just a way, like a supplement that attaches this cysteine amino acid, and it's so good for your immune system. And we used it in the virus, the coronavirus, that we had big time. We use it to support like the mucus pathways in the body. So if you have a respiratory illness or if you have asthma, we often will say that N-acetylcysteine is really good for that. And it, again, has this ability to protect us from oxidative stress. So that's just another amino acid that like I forgot that, like, again, it's just a part of the essential amino acid package deal, you could say, that we're often ingesting in all of these different foods that we're getting on a daily basis.
And, it's so, as we kind of wrap up, we also got to give a shout out to our sponsors, but working with like a functional medicine doctor to understand how much of these things, if you should be taking them, and B, how much, because I was just telling Teresa that I was started listening to Dr. Osborne's podcast just by accident, and he's awesome. I'm learning so much. But he was talking about the amino acids, and he was talking about NAC, which is N-acetylcysteine. How do you say N-acetylcysteine?
N-acetylcysteine, yeah.
N-acetylcysteine. And he was like, for your immune system, take 2,000 whatever units of whatever it is. And I was only taking 600. I've been taking NAC for, I don't know, since whenever. But I have not been taking enough. So yesterday, I actually, for the last 2 days, I've taken what he said. And it could be placebo, Teresa. It really could be placebo. But I woke up this morning feeling a lot better. It could be placebo, and I hope it is, because it tells us how powerful the brain is. And if I just need my brain to tell me, then that's all. I don't care. You know what I mean? But I mean, it's also just that maybe we're not taking enough of these things. And again, it's not all from supplements, of course, but just a little side note there.
Yeah, and I know we'll wrap up here too, but I'm glad you said about working with a functional medicine practitioner. That's the other thing, like, people will ask is, like, can you measure amino acids? And we don't do that in traditional medicine. You don't come in and we're like, can you measure my leucine content in my body, and see if I'm getting enough? But that'd be super cool if we did. But, there is amino acid testing through basically these organic acids tests that functional medicine practitioners will run, and they do actually test your amino acids and then look at all the pathways and then look at where you're deficient and then look at where you need to, from a nutrition standpoint, actually build upon where your deficiencies are. So when you say that, you're right, Jamie. They are kind of ahead of the game in terms of actually understanding how amino acids really truly are these building blocks to kind of everything. And like, if we don't have the right amounts of them, then we are actually probably struggling in some way: brain, body, organs, muscles, the whole shebang.
Totally. Well, here, we're going to wrap up here. This was such a good little back and forth. I'm drinking my coffee. We're just having a little chat. But I definitely want to be sure that we shout out to our podcast partners, specifically We Heart Nutrition. So Teresa mentioned We Heart Nutrition earlier on, as you've likely realized, but we both take magnesium. I take magnesium every single night, magnesium glycinate, and we get that from We Heart Nutrition. I just started taking the immune support, which does have some colostrum in it. Teresa, I don't know if you noticed that. It has some colostrum in it. So they just released an immune support supplement. My husband now is taking the men's supplement. So our whole family, we're just all doing the We Heart Nutrition. So we're so thankful for them. Visit weheartnutrition.com. And you can get 20% off your first order, Genius, at checkout for 20% off your first order. And then also Wonder Cow. So we talked about the 3 C's episode. If you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it. But it's bovine colostrum, something, again, that Teresa and I take every day to help our immune system, to help our gut lining. And you can visit wondercow.com and type Hormone Genius at checkout for 30% off of a subscription order. Or I think it's 10% off of just an order in general. Is that right?
15.
Okay. And then lastly, Tiny Health. Speaking of gut, we're also partnered with them for a few months here. Tiny Health does a gut testing, and they use it's called gunshot technology. So rather than just viewing like a part of the stool, they do a full analysis of it, which is different than a gut, like a GI map sort of thing. It's different. It's more advanced. And you also get a dashboard to tell you exactly like what pathogens they found and what good bacteria, bad bacteria, what kind of lifestyle recommendations they make based on the results, which is very user-friendly and helpful. So for $50 off of your test, visit tinyhealth.com and type Hormone Genius at checkout for $50 off. So Teresa, with that, we're going to wrap this one up. Is there anything else you want to share before we?
No, I think we really hit everything. I was just trying to think, is there anything with protein that we kind of forgot? But I really do feel like we had to keep it high level here.
Yeah.
And just, again, if you are vegetarian, just remember how important all the complete package of those amino acids are. And so there is a way that you can actually supplement with essential amino acids. I know there's several products out there, probably more than several. So I haven't researched them myself, Jamie, and that would be another episode. But I know there's one called Perfect Amino, but there's probably lots. So maybe if you are a vegetarian and you're like, oh man, I didn't understand how important it is to get all of these amino acids, especially from a muscle building standpoint, maybe I should be supplementing. And frankly, if you're someone who's been through trauma, if you're like let's say you broke your leg, your body is basically breaking down muscle in order to help your body survive. So any traumatic injury, any trauma, even probably emotional trauma. Like your body, again, is going to need extra amino acids. So whether you can get that all through nutrition and food, or maybe a supplement may be helpful. I mean, we know whey protein and pea protein is a way to supplement. But again, not everything is a complete package in just one thing. So that's why it takes a balance of many, many things in order to get it all right. But thanks, Jamie. This was fun. And we will always come back to these topics, I'm sure, over and over again, because they are important to your hormone genius.
That's right. Thanks for listening to the Hormone Genius Podcast. Please remember to share our podcast with your friends and family, and also follow us on social media. If you were not aware, we have a YouTube channel, so if you could like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes, we would appreciate that. Thank you so much for your support. We are excited to journey alongside you as you discover the beauty and the genius of your hormones.